huge honor to be doing a podcast today with the man, the legend, Scott Leune. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
My God, I feel like I'm your father. I'm 53. How old are you?
I am 36.
So, I guess I could be your father. What's 53 from 36? What is that? How old would I have been? 6 from 13. My God, my brain's probably pretty big. No,
yeah, you'd be 17.
I'd be 17. My God, I paid for your college, and you said 23. I want a refund from my son's college over. So yeah, 17. I could be your father, and the reason I said that is because I saw you when you just graduated middle school on Dentaltown. I mean, when was your first post? 2005.
Yeah, 2005 is when I graduated, and actually as a dental student, I saw you in a lecture at the dental school, and that was the first time I was exposed to you in Dentaltown. And
is that right? I lectured at your dental school? San Antonio?
Yeah, I went to San Antonio.
And I lectured there?
You did.
And who was that guy that was in charge of the CD there?
Bill Butler, maybe.
Bill Butler. Is he still there?
He is still there, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm going to send him an email today. That guy had more spunk and charisma and was totally into trying to get Rocky Hot speakers to come into your school, the alumni. He was just a dream, and he was so charismatic and all that stuff. Just an amazing guy. But you were so you graduated in 2005. That's when you joined Dentaltown, and then you started focusing on the business of dentistry and opening up new practices. And I think it's one of the top 10 largest threads on Dentaltown of all time. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I just, in my spare time, was just telling people the story of our practice. I was letting them know what we were doing, the successes, the failures. I was looking for advice. I was doing what everyone else does on Dentaltown and just, try to get better. And so that's what happened, and the thread just blew up, just a very long thread with a lot of value in it, and that kind of started our relationship with Dentaltown.
Well, I'll tell you, success is so counterintuitive. I mean, the world's greatest investor, Warren Buffett, the second or third richest guy in the world. There's 1,645 billionaires, and he said, forget Wall Street, I'm seeing Omaha, Nebraska. He kind of figured to follow that Peter Lynch's book, Beating the Street. He says, don't read all the 10 Qs and the 10 Ks and 10 all that stuff. He says, if there's a restaurant chain stock you're looking at, go to the restaurant. Are normal people in your town going there? Do they like it? Is there a long line? And what your counterintuitive success is, and I've seen it a half dozen times in Dentaltown, is being social pack animal, monkey ape humans, keep all their cards to themselves. And every year or so, there's some dentist that comes to a fork in the road and just feels humble and transparent and honest and posts their articulate decision with the name of their city, their website, whatever, and says, should I do this or do that? And then all these loving, caring people, most of which are anonymous, go in there and tell them the greatest advice in the world. And then you got big old national name brand consultants like Sandy Pardue and all that, giving them all this free advice. And I've watched those kids over the years, and they always go the highest and the fastest and the farthest. Samir Furry was one of those. Tarun Agarwal was one of those. August Olivier, did I mention that name? August, how do you pronounce it? August Olivier?
Yeah, I think so.
And you, and most people, when they have a decision, it's all private, and I get all these private messages. Every time I get a private message, I'm always thinking, it's not even the spirit of Dentaltown. Why are you asking me privately? Why are you sending me a private mail? Why don't you post it, be transparent, and let everybody chime in? And you were transparent with your journey, and then at first you were the student, and then after a couple of years in adult practices, then you became the master teacher, and that's exactly why, because of the decision-making process. Starting out, I don't know, I'm young grasshopper, help me, and everybody helped you, and the next thing you know, you're the fourth degree black belt in the business of dentistry. I mean, dude, you're just crushing it. So what did you want to start? What did you want to start talking about today? What did you want this session to focus on?
Yeah, well, I think startups would be a great topic. We get just a whole lot of dentists every year coming to our seminars to learn about startups, and The industry's really changed in the last 10 years, and startups are bringing a lot of dentists a lot of success if they're done properly. So I think we could maybe focus this session on talking about startups, what's happening across the nation, and what are some of the best performers doing, and how do people kind of go about evaluating that model.
And in the technical world of MBA, that would be a de novo practice. So on these chains, de novo, DE, it's N-O-U-B-E-A-U, meaning starting again from the beginning. It's a late 18th century French word, literally French meaning from new. Do you see, a lot of these corporate empires don't do de novo startup practice. A lot of them just do mergers and acquisitions. Do you see the big corporate expansion more buying or startup de novo practices from scratch?
Well, on the corporate side, you actually see both. Some of the corporate, the chains, the DSOs, they focus on a de novo model because if done well, if you can do a startup practice well, it brings a higher return for that corporate dental practice. Other corporate models of the DSOs focus on acquisitions, and then you've got the larger ones that are kind of doing both. You'll see, like, for example, Heartland, they might go start 40 or 50 de novos within a year or two, and then, of course, they're also acquiring practices. For the private dentist, it's getting harder and harder to find practices that are worth buying in areas that have growth. A lot of the great practices for sale are being sold to corporations early on. You got young dentists coming out and they don't want to work for corporations anymore. They want to have their own thing and they can't find something to buy. And a lot of them fall into a trap of buying a small practice, buying a practice that's not successful, and then hoping they can turn this thing around in an area that maybe doesn't need them or will not support that kind of growth.
One thing we focus. How many have you started? I think you started 11 yourself. You helped 60 others, and then your breakawaypractice.com website, you help manage right now 130 other practices. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. I myself have owned 11 startup practices, and then we've now are part of building, I think we got 68 or 69 offices across the country on top of the 11 that I've owned. And then we also manage 140 or 150 practices through our company that are not startups necessarily.
Okay, but what's the difference between the 60 help build 60 other startups and 130 you manage? So you helped 60. Okay, you had 11 startups your own. Then you helped 60 other startups, and then you helped manage 130. So you helped 60. So your company has a consulting service to start the startup process.
That's right. Dentists come to us saying, I want to build a high-growth, highly successful practice. And we have a program that's a 5-year program to take them from the very first step of finding an awesome location to 4 years after they open, to help them grow, design, oversee construction, manage, have huge group discounts, have all kinds of training and support and coaching, so that by the end of their 4th year being open from scratch, they're hopefully just a massive success story.
Okay, so I'm sorry to keep it around. So you say a 5-year plan. So it's basically a year to contact you to open practice. Then you manage it the 4 years after that. That's where you come up with 5 years.
Yeah, so it's around 5 years. But these practices are owned by the dentist. They make every decision. What we do is we give them the answers, we give them the path, we scream out the solutions, and we do most of the work for them if they want us to. It's kind of like having a personal trainer and a personal chef all in one to try to get you healthier. We kind of do all the work, and we hold them accountable to doing the things they should be doing as much as they want, but they own the practice. They get to use all of our systems and our proven methods to build highly successful startups, yet they maintain autonomy, they maintain control. It allows us also to see across the country what works well, what does not. we've now done this. I mean, you could almost make the argument that we've been part of 80 startup practices. So we know the space very well. We know how to find awesome locations. We know how to market them properly. We know how to staff them, how to deal with hygiene, how to deal with training and compliance, and how to design them and save a bunch of money while doing all of that because we've just got a large sample size that we've been helping.
Okay, so everybody's probably wondering, what's the fee for this 5-year service plan? Is it a percent of revenues, a percent of income? Is it just a fixed fee? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a formula, and while I'd love to pitch our services for an hour, I mean, I'd rather just give a bunch of value, but we do have a formula on how we charge dentists based on how large they get. We get paid more if they get large, and we get paid a lot less if they don't get large. But for every dollar they have to pay us, we save them about $2.50 in discounts. So, I mean, you can make the argument we're free because they're getting discounts and services we've negotiated that only the large corporate groups get right now.
Okay, so I assume you're talking about labs and sundries?
Yes, labs and supplies, but marketing, it's sign design and installation, it's software, it's just about every item on the P&L. We have gone in and found smarter ways and cheaper ways to do them and negotiated directly with vendors to give big discounts that they only give us. They're not even allowed to give those discounts to anyone else.
Okay, so I want to ask you right out of the gate, let's start. Is obviously if you opened up a practice in America, it would be better than if you opened it up in Ethiopia. Do you agree?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
It's obvious that if you opened up a dental office in the United States versus Paraguay, you would do better in America. So
yeah, I mean, America offers just an awesome opportunity for startups and for entrepreneurs. There's other countries that would do well.
But the point I'm making, though, is, I mean, is when you set out to help this dentist, is picking the right demographic location probably the most important decision?
It is one of the most important decisions to the early success of the startup. You can look at it as if you have the great demographics, then you've got a safety net to failure. You're going to have a higher natural patient flow come in. You're going to have better response to your marketing. You're going to get a boost when you get out of the gates. You're going to have a head start. There's a lot of things though that can counteract that. And if you don't have a great location, you can still do well in other ways. But having a great location is one of the easiest ways to get a head start right out of the gate. If you don't have a great location, if you can't get the patient flow in, you are having stunted growth in a startup that might last a year, 2 or 3 years because of a slow start.
And Walmart was in 32 states before it went into one of the 117 towns in America that house half of all Americans. And Heartland Dental, Rick Workman, I mean, he was from Effingham, a town of 10,000. He did this Walmart strategy. He went to all those small towns where there wasn't even a dentist. He was a multi-millionaire before he went to the major town. Do you believe the rural is still the gold mine as opposed to LA, San Fran, and Phoenix, and Houston, and Dallas? Or do you, how important is that to you?
Yeah, it's more complicated than that. So we have the ability to scan the country and pluck out all the pockets of high demand where we could do a startup practice. And a lot of rural areas might need a dentist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's better or easier than going right into a major metropolitan area like Houston. The key is to be able to find those pockets of high demand. And if you think most dental practices need about 30,000 people around them to start marketing properly to drive up patient flow, we're really looking at pockets of 30,000 people. In a rural area, that might be a very large radius, and in Houston, that might be a 3-mile radius. But the goal is to find those pockets that need a dentist. And we found we've got 7 or 8 offices in California, for example, that are just booming. Yet people would argue, well, California's saturated. Well, only if you look at it as a state. But if you look at it as a pocket of 30,000 people here and there, you find pockets that need a dentist. So one key is to find that. Now, the downside to a rural area is it's harder to get population density. So what's just as important to the dentist population ratio is population density, meaning how many people live within a drivable distance from your practice. If I don't have a lot of people living close to my practice, it's harder for me to pull out specialty procedures, for example, from the population. Versus if people are living on top of each other, my marketing can be more powerful and more predictable. So now I'm not saying rural areas you can't be successful. You can. There's benefits and drawbacks to both. We haven't even talked about, is this going to be an associate-driven practice or an owner-driven practice? The more rural we get, then we have to recognize it might be harder to staff. It might be more expensive to staff a dentist there, which is why you see most of the large corporate groups starting in metropolitan areas, I think. It's easier to market to a higher population density. It's easier to staff that office. And the reality is, we dentists, the gold mine of dentistry, I think, being a dentist, was about 10 years ago.
Say that again.
Yeah, I think the golden age of being a dentist might have been 10 years ago, where all you had to have was a Yellow Pages ad, send out a postcard, maybe you had a website, patients believed us. Today it's getting a lot harder. And most dentists aren't running their practices properly. If you think about it, like if dentists, if we had to compete like the restaurant industry has to compete, we sure would run our businesses a lot differently. So right now there's this huge opportunity for dentists and corporate groups alike to come into dentistry, run businesses the way they should be run, build locations in areas that need a dentist and market properly, and they just don't have to be that amazing to make it work and do well, because the rest of us have kind of been lazy when it comes to running a business. We haven't been tracking metrics properly.
I mean, the average grocery store chain in America has a 1% margin. And dentists, if you look at their supplies, last month it was 6%, next month it's 8%, and then the month after it's 5%. Their supplies variance from month to month is 3 times greater than the entire margin at Kroger, Dillon's, Safeway, Fry's. I mean, it's literally, dentists have no idea how good they have it.
On top of that, there's the law that says to be a dentist or to own a practice, you got to jump through all these hoops. So we have some monopolistic effect as well that prevents us from having to be amazing business.
Yeah, there's so many economic barriers to entry in the trade of medicine, dentistry, and law, and pharmaceuticals. That's why they have the market.
But Wall Street moving in, now they see all this opportunity. They see the broken systems of the average practice, the bad locations a lot of dentists are in, the poor marketing, the poor phone skills. And they're able to fix those things and do well, even with high dentist turnover, even with commoditizing and competing on price. Those corporate groups are still able to do okay. We dentists, if we just have the right knowledge and the right systems, we can go build startup practices and do amazing. We can go run highly profitable practices that we don't have to worry so much about that corporate chain trying to compete.
And I would say to my peers who are starting to listen to this says, well, I'm not starting to practice. I'm going to, this isn't pertaining to me. Dude, I know several dentists who have made billions in states like Nebraska and South Dakota that just as a side hobby started a couple of practices and then sold them to big corporate America. I mean, I know dentists who have made billions. This is a very lucrative deal. And as far as not being able to find an associate in a rural area, how come the Navy has no problem finding a guy to leave his wife and a baby and go sit out in a boat for 6 months, doing circles in the middle of the Pacific for half a year, and you can't find one to go to Shawnee, Oklahoma? Are you kidding me? I mean, if the Navy, the Army, I know dentists that went to Iraq and Afghanistan, the DMZ in North Korea, and you're telling me you can't find one for Eloy, Arizona? Come on. So this might be, so if you're a young dentist out of school, Scott Leune, I'm going to deliver you several servings of this man. And if you're an older dentist like me, this might be some sidekick hobby you do on the side with Scott and make $1 million on the side for your underfunded 401k. So I want to ask you the most important benchmark. What does the average dental office collect, and what does the average dentist net income make versus your $150,000 you're 60 other startups and you're 130 reps. I mean, are you getting these guys to be the average too? Are they below average? Are they above average? What are you
So,
your benchmark?
According to the national data on startup practices in dentistry, the average startup collects about $305,000 their first year open from scratch. That's the national average. On that 305, they've lost about $15,000 for the year. So there's no cash flow there. There's no profit, and the dentist did not get a salary. All right, that's a very depressing average. The practices that we work with, granted, we don't control them. We don't make the decisions. The dentist makes the decisions whether they're the right ones or the wrong ones. So I feel like a lot of our dentists could do better. But our average dentist by month 12 is collecting about $85,000. And they've made, by month 12, they're making about $35,000 to $40,000 per month cash flow.
Okay, say again, what is your dentist year one and year net?
Yeah, if you take a snapshot at month 12, because that's the data I've got available to me here for you. If you take a snapshot at month 12 open from scratch, they've collected $85,000, and they've taken home about $37,000 of that $85,000. And if you look at the national average at month 12, the national average is they're collecting around $35,000. And at month 12, they might be taking home about $5,000 at month 12. So we're about almost 3 times the national average and maybe 7 times the national average for profit. But we have some dentists that, last month we had a startup dentist. He took home $85,000 last month. It was his 11th month open from scratch. His take home was $85,000. So you have some people that take the systems of proper startup and business management, and they take that and they just explode. Then you've got the other dentists who are scared, who are timid, who are doing this the first time, and they want help, and they end up doing well. But the guys that are aggressive, that are growers, that have always done well in life and in school, and they want to just conquer, you take good business systems, good marketing, good location, good design, and you put that behind those guys, and they just blow it out of the water.
Okay, now, do these practices take delta? Do they take DSOs? Do they take each of those? Or are they all different depending on where they're at and what they're done?
Well, the practices we work with, they're all different. But I think a better way to talk about this is what should a practice do? In an area where practice is in high demand, there's going to be a lot less pressure to be in network with insurance plans. And what we found in measuring and listening to phone calls and measuring conversion rates on the phone, we know that being in network with an insurance plan in most parts of the country does not produce more phone calls. What it does is it raises the conversion rate of a phone call, meaning if 100 patients call to schedule an appointment, if you're in network, more of them will schedule. But you won't get more phone calls by being in network in most parts of the country. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, if I've got a startup practice, is my schedule wide open? And do I have a capacity problem where I have too much capacity and not enough demand? We would want to consider being in network after proving that we can't get the patient flow, if we have a conversion rate problem over the phone. Whereas you got the opposite practice that's slammed with patients, that doesn't have a whole lot of room, going in network with them doesn't make sense. So if I were to sum this up, being in network doesn't necessarily bring in more phone calls. It just gets more phone calls to say yes to scheduling. But there's other things you can do to get people to say yes to scheduling besides being in network. I think a lot of people think that I am an insurance dentist. That's not necessarily true. I'm an insurance dentist when it makes sense to be an insurance dentist. But I don't want to be an insurance dentist. I'd rather be a higher profit margin dentist. But it's not just that simple. Someone saying that you should start out being in network with a startup, I think is not experienced enough. You shouldn't really listen to that advice. It's much more complicated than that. It has to do with the demand of the area, the success of your marketing, what your success is over the phone, how much extra capacity you have in your schedule. All those things have to be looked at to determine whether or not you should be taking insurance. And of course, I didn't even mention insurance negotiations, what we're able to negotiate for pricing in different parts of the country on different insurance plans. It's all part of the conversation.
So are you negotiating higher rates for your offices that you're managing for insurance providers?
Yes. Not all insurance companies do negotiate that, but a lot of them do. And every time we open an office, we're trying to negotiate them up.
Who won't do it, and who will listen to your phone call?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Which insurance companies just do not do that for anyone, whether it's Hardwood, Pacific, or you, and which ones would negotiate?
You know, there's some insurance companies in some areas that won't negotiate, and then in other areas they will. And it's not just about negotiating with them. There's also, you can sign on to smaller insurance providers that lock you into a higher fee schedule with the bigger providers. So there's two different paths. You can sign on to the right insurance companies in the right order, or also you can negotiate with the insurance companies in that area. But in one area they may negotiate, in another area they won't. So I can't really give you a rule of thumb on who will and who won't. It's different in every part of the country.
And how many parts of the country are you in? How many states are you working with?
On the insurance negotiation side, we're probably in 30 or 40 states. On the outsourcing services and managing supplies and coaching and all the other things we do, we're probably in 40-something states. I'd have to look that up to give you
So when I said is demographics the most important, you said, well, it's one of the most important. Go through important steps of where to go or what are you looking at? When a dentist says, I want to start a new practice, what are you looking at?
So you're talking about what are we looking at demographically? Yeah. So we're looking at, of course, dentist population ratio, but we're also doing a complete competition analysis, calling every single office in the area, and we have a whole list of information that we get to tell, are they, do they have too much demand or not enough demand? What are some of their weaknesses and what are some of their advantages, so that we get a good idea of a specific area, what's going on with the dental practices in that area. So we do a lot of undercover work. We look at population density, how many people live within drivable distance. We also look at future population growth. We look at income levels, dental expenditures per population. We look at how many employees are employed in that area during the day. And we connect all of that information with what the dentist is trying to do, what their vision is. Are they wanting to be one of the few high-end cosmetic offices, or are they wanting to be PPO mom kind of practice, or are they trying to do multiple locations where the owner does all the implants in all 4 locations? All of those practice models would have a different demographic makeup that would be ideal. It's kind of like, I hate what dentists do. Dentists say, I want to live in this spot. That building's pretty. There's windows there. Let me call the landlord and see what rent is, right? And that's their formula for success. Can you imagine if Starbucks had that as their formula for success? Let's go to pretty buildings with windows near our manager's home. That doesn't make any sense. Dentists have to learn the information they need to know to have a formula for success. And that's part of the problem, is we're very slow as an industry to say, here are best practices. Here's the different types of models in dentistry, and demographically, here's what we want to see for each one for a startup practice.
When I got out of dental school in '87 and I was trying to decide where to go, I wrote to the Department of Economic Security and said, what's the economic projection for America? Because I was born in Wichita, the Coliseum was a great silo, and the population had been 285,000 for 10, 20 years, because every time a girl got pregnant, a guy left town. And DC said that they thought from 85 to 2000, the United States created 30 million jobs, and half of them like cities. And it was like Tampa, Boston, Phoenix, Orange County, and San Fran. When I was looking at the demographics of Orange County, within a mile of the ocean, there was a dentist for every 300 people. And by the time you drove an hour inland to Redwood, to Palmdale, In 87, it was one dentist for every 6,000. So what is the national dentist to population ratio, and what do you like to see that?
I don't know the national average.
I mean, we hear 1 to 1850. I hear that number thrown around all the time.
Yeah.
150 Americans per dentist. But what would you like to see?
Well, I get asked that question all the time. I think that it's like asking a cook, in this dish, what makes it taste so good? What's the one thing? But it's not. It's everything.
I'm done on the fat and the sugar.
If I were to come up with a number, it'd be a lie. I think people that come up with that number are either ignorant in the process, not understanding how all the numbers play into account to that process, or they're trying to sell us something. They're the ones saying, hey, hire me to find you that number, because all you need is 2,000 to 1 ratio and you can do a startup, so hire me to find you that number. They're either trying to sell us the number, the report, or they just haven't built offices themselves and truly understand that it's not just that number. It's a weighted thing.
What if one of my viewers is sitting here in Spokane, Washington, sees a city, an hour away? Can he just call you? Can he just email you? Is there a fee to that? Well, what of my listeners? You're probably talking about 7,000 dentists, and probably 85% of them are community work. What if some guy just says, man, I've been noticing this area for a year? Should he email you? Should he go to your website, breakawaypractice.com, and send you the zip code? Well, how much would it cost them for you to look at that or answer that question if someone just wants to talk to you?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways. I mean, if they go to our seminar on startups, in a very short amount of time, they will learn all the ins and outs that they would need to get started. They'd also learn how to save $200,000 to $300,000 on building an office. That's one way to contact us. That's the way
How often is your seminar? Is that a 2-day, 3-day? How long is that seminar?
Yeah, that seminar we give 8 times per year. Right now in 2015, it's a 1-day seminar. In 2016, it will actually be expanded to a 2-day seminar that will cover not just how to find the ideal location and design a practice and save a couple $100,000, but also the management side of a startup practice. When to hire hygienists, how to market properly, how to manage staff and train them. It's an intense seminar. Right now in a seminar weekend, between the 2 seminars we offer, it's 700 pages of content. It's just all value. It's very intense.
So in 2015 right now, you said you have 2 different seminars. They're each 1 day?
Yeah, 2015 we've got a 1-day seminar on how to find an ideal location and save a ton of money building it. Then the other seminar we have is 2.5 days. It's called our Business Masters Seminar. That is 500 pages of content. That the ins and outs on how to build and manage a high-growth, high-profit practice. It's not for startups necessarily. It's for any dental practice.
Is it always in the same city, or do you give it around the country?
It's in San Antonio in our home office, where I've got 130 or 140 staff that are answering 30,000 phone calls a month and billing insurance and managing AR and marketing and doing auditing. So we give this seminar in our own facility, and people can walk around and hear these systems being used and see what kind of results they get firsthand.
I want to go. I would love to. You already got my mind racing. I would love to go. I mean, I've always only had one practice. I did some startups and sold them. I've started 3 others and sold them. But then I had started 4 kids, and I started a magazine and a website and lectures. So now I'm a grandpa. But I'd still be curious. I'd still be interested to see that. I really would.
Well, dentistry's changed. It's a new face of dentistry. Find the things that practices don't necessarily do well, and have someone else do them better. And take a large sample size of practices and find all the things that the best performers do, and create systems around them, and teach that to all the rest of the dentists. It's all of us joining together kind of in an alliance to learn all the things we need to learn to do better. In the past, you'd have consultants come in and try to train us how to do one thing here or there. Now, we build a whole system, and we have a process where you come in for a very short amount of time and you're given all the answers. And then you decide which one of those things do you want to do yourself and which one of those things might you want someone else to help you with. But we give all the answers right up front in a very intense training seminar, and in an environment where they get to see this large sample size of highly successful practices being managed.
Scott, we have a unique opportunity here. Here's two real dentists that really know how to do root canals, implants, and ortho, and sinus lifts, and all that stuff. And probably all of our listeners are dentists. I mean, I have never gotten an email from I've gotten a couple of emails from IT dentists. I've never had one from a US. The dentists they think it's all about them. That if you build a demo content, they're just all this. And if I just go to North Scottsdale where there's 100 dentists on every corner, and I open it up, and I go to the Painting Institute, the Play Center, and I'm just the best damn dentist, I'll be rich and famous. And it's so far from the truth. I think the opposite. I think the most important person in the office is the lady answering the phone up front, or the person answering the phone in my office. I have 4 people once a man, 3 women. Do you think, you were talking earlier about the conversion rate, that if you're in that marketing church, you'll get more calls, but you do get more conversions to actual scheduled appointments. What are your thoughts on the importance of the person answering the phone, and what can you tell the dentists listening to this now that it's really not their occlusion skills that they need to, but it's probably more important that all answering that phone up front and how they're answering. What are your thoughts on the phone answering skills?
Yeah, I think anyone listening to this that's been to one of our seminars is probably smiling right now, because I think phones are one of the most important things. But before I tell you how important I think they are, I want you to understand our philosophy. There's about a dozen of these things that when you improve them, it causes exponential growth in the practice. For example, I could double the new patient flow. I can double the conversion rate on the phones or answer twice as many calls. I could double the case acceptance. I could diagnose twice as much dentistry. There's all these things where you have a lever that you could pull that would increase the success of the practice. The phones is one of the earliest levers you can pull, so it has a dramatic effect, and it's one of the easiest things to fix. The national average right now on the missed call rate. Most practices, I ask them, how many calls do you miss? And they say, oh, well, we answer just about every call. We probably miss maybe 5 or 10%. National average is 38%. They have no clue that they're missing calls because 5 calls are trying to come in to their 3 lines, 2 of which are being tied up by someone verifying insurance or someone confirming appointments. They don't know they even missed those calls trying to come in. And then you look at the conversion rate. When a call is actually answered, what percent of those result in appointments? And you look at new patient calls, the national average on conversion rate is 43%, meaning 100 new patients call to schedule, 43 get an appointment. That leaves a whole lot of potential. So we think we're missing a third of our calls, and of the ones we answer, we're only converting 43%. It's very easy to see how a lot of our practices are getting 150 or 200 new patients a month because we fixed the phones. Where another practice might be getting 40 new patients a month. They could get more if they could answer more calls and if they can convert more appointments. Now back to startups, because that's what we're talking about here on this podcast is startups. They've got a big disadvantage. They might only be open 2 or 3 days a week. They might only have 1 front office person. So they're going to miss a bunch of calls. And that 1 front office person hasn't been through training. This new dentist, maybe with this new practice, is just trying to get the x-rays to work. and they're not focused on training and listening and recording and auditing their front office phone calls. So, and unfortunately, a startup practice is going to live and die by that new patient flow, of which marketing and phone performance are determining how successful that practice becomes. So a startup practice to ignore phones, to not have proper auditing, to not have training, and to not have the marketing to drive in the phone calls, that startup practice is going to be that stunted national average of 300 grand collections in the first year, and the dentist made no money.
I really loved when you were on a rant about pulling leverage. You said, there's so many levers. You said there was a dozen. You named increasing the rates, incoming call, phone call conversion rates, increased diagnosing. What other levers are there? That was 3.
Yeah, well, just, and each one has its own levers. So you look at, for example, conversion rate. Let's just look at that one lever. What are the little levers inside of the conversion rate? And we know that if dentists have high initial upfront fees to come in for the first appointment, that hurts the conversion rate. If they don't have a lot of prime time appointments available, that could be after hours, or it could be just enough ops. They've expanded their hygiene department so they can see more patients after 3. If they don't do that, that hurts the conversion rate. If they've got poor phone skills, the receptionist might still sound nice. She might be saying truthful things, but what she's not following is a system for conversion. That can hurt it. Not outsourcing all the calls you miss. It's a no-brainer to have someone else answer a phone call you missed. That hurts. Conversion rate. There's all kinds of things that will affect the phone performance. Besides that, you've got things I didn't mention. Other big levers are internal referrals. So once a patient makes it through, let's say we did get them to call, they made it through that wall, then we did answer the phone, then we did convert them to appointment, then we did have them show. That's another one, no-show rate. And then they showed, we did diagnose plenty of dentistry. That's a lever. And then they did say yes. That's case acceptance. And then they did follow through and show up for the work. And then after they showed up, they got all the work done, the full treatment plan, and then they referred us other people. All of those things are little walls that we build up that we can break down. There's systems, there's lists of things we can do. Some of them are very easy, some of them are more complicated, that will give us an added boost in each one of those things. And a startup practice typically doesn't know any of them, and they will die if they don't do those things well. A startup practice has more pressure to be great than a mature practice that's built up 20 years of goodwill in this area where they've treated generations and people show up because you're the doc and they say yes because they've always said yes, even if you're terrible. Startup practice does not have that luxury. They got to be great. They got to do it well.
I know in the 2008 meltdown, all my friends, they got kids that say, well, where do you know these patients from? I go, dude, I'm treating your children now. I've been here since 87. And kids move back to town because their parents live here. They're an hour away, but they remember coming to see me when they were 5. Okay, so we should be focusing on startup practice. Yeah, the startup practice, infrastructure. Should you plumb it for 6 and open with 2 chairs? You plumb it for 4? And when you start, is it 1 receptionist, 1 assistant, 1 dentist? Talk about the actual physical startup practice. And I'm sure there are more. I loved it when you said we scream the answers at you. I just love that. In fact, I almost want to name this podcast Scott Leune is screaming the answers to success.
Yeah. Okay. On a startup practice, most dentists are solo dentists doing this practice they're building. It's really their job they're building. They're building themselves a job. In that situation, what's very important is to have adequate working capital to pump up growth and to protect from stunted growth if things go wrong. To have adequate working capital, we need to spend the least amount of money possible on building this office, which means we need a small facility. We need to still have lots of ops, but we need to cut out the fat, cut out stupid equipment, cut out stupid wasted space. We can have the smallest facility possible, yet still have the number of ops we want. By having a small facility, we have less upfront construction costs, and we have less ongoing costs. Our break-even point is lower because we got a smaller facility and less rent. Now, how many ops? It depends on how.
Smaller. I mean, how much space? 1,000 square feet, 1,500, 2,000.
It depends on the design philosophy you follow. If you follow some of the older design guys that made a lot of money 10 years ago in the golden age of dentistry, you'd be building huge offices with not a lot of ops. If you follow our system, your office will be about 330 square feet for every dental operatory you have. So A 5-op practice would be a 1,650 square foot footprint. But that gets you all the storage, all the private consultation room, video game room, big lobby, I mean, everything you'd want, private office, everything you'd want in that footprint.
Okay, but what did you say, 5-op?
As an example, if someone wanted 5 ops. But my answer to the question, how many ops should you want in a startup, it depends on how you schedule. I believe that with smart scheduling, you can fit a lot more dentistry in a smaller facility. I think that most dentists will want somewhere between 5 and 7 ops. A higher producing dentist will lean on a larger practice, primarily because they will have more assistant-driven production, ortho or sleep apnea therapy. They will be more efficient. They will have shorter appointment times. They will need more auxiliary staff to support their production. Another dentist, let's say the average Joe, they may not need as many ops. And so we have to really determine, is this an average Joe, and how are they scheduling? Some schedulings require, some scheduling systems require more ops, whereas others don't. I could show you a scheduling system where you can have a 7-op practice and have 3 full-time dentists and 6.5 full-time hygienists working in 7 ops, Monday through Friday. Yet I can show you another scheduling system where if you wanted 3 dentists, 6.5 hygienists, I mean, you might need, 15 ops. So you have to do it right, you have to really determine how productive are you, what type of assistant-driven production are you doing, and how are you scheduling yourself. Then you know how many ops you need. But you want to have the smallest dental practice possible to achieve that goal, so that you have much more money in your pocket on day one, so you could push that growth.
Okay, and you said don't start with a bunch of stupid equipment. Specifically, what is unnecessary equipment out of the gate?
All right. There's it depends. So it depends on how you deliver dentistry. I'm going to use a dumb analogy for you, but I think it'll make sense. Let's say you want a kitchen. You're going to fill it with a bunch of cabinets, right? Why do we fill it with cabinets? Because we got a bunch of plates we got to store. Well, if we got rid of plates, we wouldn't need the cabinets, right? So let's say our dining table had little indentions in it. It was stainless steel, and we never had plates anymore. We just ate in the indention on the table, and we cleaned it when we're done. Now we don't need plates. Now we don't need cabinets, right? Same thing in dentistry. How we deliver dentistry determines if we need the cabinets. Are we going to store things in all the ops, or are we going to have centralized storage? If we have centralized storage, we may not need all that storage in the ops. If we don't need the storage in the ops, we don't need the space for them. So we save money on the stupid storage, and we save money on the wasted space for that storage.
Store things in the ops, for storage in the ops.
That's just an example, but the national average, you'll spend about $45,000 to $50,000 on equipment per operatory. I spend 12. So I spend 12 grand per op on equipment. I can equip 4 ops on day one for just as much money as the guy down the street that only equips, his 1 op in the old way of following what all the suppliers tell you, listening to what architects tell you, and not really following more lean design philosophies.
And what about the big ticket items? I mean, there's CT, 3-dimensional X-rays, 100 grand. There's CAD cams, 150,000. There's lasers that cost 75,000. What about all that big buzz?
Yeah, so when I say 12 grand an op, it includes intraoral cameras in every single room, and digital sensors, all the handpieces, curing lights, diagonodents, a lot of TV screens, all the computers, everything you need. That figure, the 12 grand, does not include a cone beam or a CEREC. So those are additional things. But it does include the vac, the compressor, the nitrous carts, the model trimmer, the autoclave. So lasers, cone beams, CEREC, that would be on top of that.
But let me ask you this. When dentists ask me if they need $100,000 CT, I tell you access to one. They're oral surgeons, they're very honest, they're more in big towns like LA. There's actually radiology centers, all that stuff. But I'm going to ask you, what do you think of the CAD cam movement? Because it seems like a lot of offices were doing, like the first appointment, they would non-prepare craft and press the crown hour for CT. later, in there for 30 minutes. Now, that patient's in the chair for 2 to 3 hours, and the dentist is doing all that work. I mean, so sometimes it seems like a lot of dentists need $150,000 to devote themselves from the dentist to the lab tech. And then, some, and there has to be a crunch time where if you can't do the CAD/CAM restoration in a certain amount of time, you're not making money. So I want to ask you, you're managing a lot of practices. Do the practices that have CAD/CAM, not just Sarah, or there's some now from Korea and other countries, do you think they make more money, or do you think they're just playing lab tech?
Yeah, so we've measured this. So I think you're going to love my answer here, because we've got everything at Breakaway is about measuring and finding facts. So my opinion initially was a lot different than what we found out. So here's what we found out. First of all, using CAD/CAM takes longer than not using CAD/CAM. We know that it's more chair time for the dentist to use CAD/CAM on average than to send it out the old-fashioned way and have 2 visits. But is that important or not? Well, if a dentist has a wide-open schedule, it doesn't matter if it takes them 10 or 20 minutes longer, right? So capacity comes into it. Do we have a wide-open schedule or not? Now, then you hear the argument, well, CAD/CAM's cheaper. Well, it depends. I spend $29 a unit on labs because we've got negotiated pricing. So actually having a crown done, by a lab is cheaper for me than CAD/CAM. Whereas another dentist might spend $150 or $200 a unit. Okay, but what we also found out, the real value of CAD/CAM is not saving money, and it's definitely not being faster. It's not faster. The real value is that patients go deeper into their treatment plan. So instead of having 1 or 2 crowns done, they'll just knock out all 4. So when you look at the average size of completed treatment, how deep they go into the treatment plan, dentists that have a CEREC, for example, or any CAD/CAM unit, are having patients go deeper into their treatment plan. And that's where the real profit comes into play. Now, I'm not talking about dentists that are just diagnosing, inlays on every single patient. I'm talking about looking at the procedures done before CAD/CAM and after CAD/CAM, those common procedures, and how deep into a treatment plan a patient gets before and after. That's where the true value of CAD/CAM is. Now, if you're a dentist with high lab fees, CAD/CAM will save you money. If you're a dentist that has a wide open schedule, then taking time doesn't matter. But for me, when you do everything else right, when you have good lab fees, when you have a proper schedule, then the value comes into a deeper treatment plan being accepted. You can make the argument that it's advanced technology. Maybe there's some sort of marketing pitch to that. Maybe there's more internal referrals from that. We haven't been able to see it. We haven't measured that. All we've been able to see is deeper treatment plans being accepted.
Well, Scott, how come so many of my friends disagree? I mean, personal friends, right? When they take an infragut impression and send it to the lab, I mean, a lot of times they've never been met, is making it on a mesh. I have my assistant do the entire infragut. I have Jan or Christina or Zach, the damn thing. I have my jobs. I don't care, but it seems like they're controlling. They're like, well, you have to scan, and you have to mark the dies. And really? I mean, you're not doing that when you send an infragut impression to the lab. I basically only do what's irreversible. I prep it, and then I come back and just cement it. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's faster to do it the old way for most people. So if you have a full schedule, you're slammed, you just want to have faster crowns maybe if you're trying to measure the money. But some people don't have an open schedule, and some people enjoy doing it. Some people make the argument that it's higher quality, that they got more control. There's a lot of benefits to it, and I personally am a CAD/CAM fan, but I don't kid myself. Based on our data, you're slower when you do CAD/CAM. Based on our data, you don't save money. But I believe that by having more cases accepted, getting deeper into the treatment plan, we ultimately fill the practice faster and therefore have more control on, do we keep expanding? Do we raise our fees? We can have more control over our profitability in the long term by raising our demand.
Now, I want to ask another question. Since we're talking about startups, let's say, and maybe I'm being a selfish bastard because I'm an older guy and I'm thinking of a startup for, to build it for a business on the side. I'm not what you say, building a job. I'm talking about building an investment on the side. Like, say, I did that. I'm in opportunity on 40 Valley. I did one on 46 Chandler. I did one out in the city of Chandler. And I got it going. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But some people say that if they're going to, some of the big wigs, I don't seem to totally that, but they build 6 operatory offices and they just have one dentist, and assistants, 2 assistants, 2 receptionists, 2 hygienists, whatever. That when they try other models where they double that with 2 dentists, that the minute you go from 1 dentist to 2 dentists, they exponentially have HR problems, conflict, disagreements, or putting out HR fires. And they just say that, when there's one dentist, assistants, hygienists, they're all just looking at one leader, and the minute you have to, like every major religion only has one God. They in Yahweh, Jesus, all, not many religions have 2 or more gods. Now, do you think that if you're building this as de novo, and you want to own this income property on the side, and maybe someday you'll sell it to a corporate, do you see one dentist a lot easier to manage than a 2 dentist practice or not?
I believe that the stories you're hearing are more the result of poor systems. So a practice being successful with just one dentist, when you add a second dentist and it starts failing, you start having HR problems or patient problems or whatever it is, that's just a sign that there was no real good way of managing that practice to begin with. We're almost lucky it was doing okay because this one person was allowing it to be okay. That as you keep expanding to more dentists or more multiple locations, all the weaknesses in running the business are come into the spotlight, and that can bring us down. So if you look at the profitability of a practice, we're much more profitable over the long term having multiple dentists pay the overhead of this small facility. Also, having multiple dentists allows us to build a bigger patient base, which then gives us more specialty procedures. So it's much more profitable to have multiple dentists. The real question is, well, how do you run practices to have multiple dentists? That means you have to have your scheduling systems perfected. You have to have your HR side done. You have to be able to listen to the requests and demands and concerns of dentists and act on them immediately. There's got to be a lot of things fixed. As you grow bigger, if those things aren't fixed, they eventually become problems, and then I might be the dentist that says, well, only have one dentist in your practice because the minute you have 2, it doesn't work. That's not really the case. The most profitable practices and the corporations know that they need multiple dentists. That builds a big specialty base of patients. It has a lot of revenue to pay the overhead. It also gives them a lot more flexibility in case you do have a problem with this patient or this dentist or this staff person. You've got a lot more resources and infrastructure to overcome that.
And Scott, screen the answer. I've only got you for 2 more minutes of this, but when you do a sort of practice, screen the answers on what the hours can be. It seems like everybody in my neighborhood is open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. Does that really work for a startup?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've measured conversion rates for practices that are open early and late on weekends and not. And I can tell you, in most parts of the country, being open early does nothing on the conversion rate. Whether you're open at 6:30 or 8, the same amount of patients scheduled. Being open late, completely different story. If you're open after hours, you definitely have an increased conversion rate. Being open on Saturdays, same thing, an increased conversion rate. So, of course, if this is your job, if you're building your job, you also have to balance out your family, your personal life, the lifestyle you envision leading here with your practice. And so I'll tell you that the later you're open, and if you're open on the weekend, you have strengths, you have benefits that you don't have otherwise. So you should be as open late as you can. You should be open as on many weekends as you can, and you will probably have more initial success that way.
And when you say late, sorry, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., how late are you talking?
Yeah, so we measured practices that were open till 7. I don't know what happens when you're open till 8 or 9. Maybe it's better. I know. But the only data we had is practices that are open till 7. I would also recommend that right at around 3 or 4 o'clock, you really change your schedule. You make your schedule more open to new patients. You might go to an assisted hygiene format, for example, and take a couple ops from the dentist so that you can have more seats in your restaurant during the lunch hour rush. You know, that's what we're talking about at the end of the day. Have more seats available for
Hey,
these
Scott,
patients.
my job is to predict and guess the questions these guys are listening to on the phone, and I know there's a bunch of people screaming, it's on Saturday, no one shows up. No one schedules the appointment, they never show up. True or false?
True sometimes, usually false. So we know that if you're scheduling prophies on a Saturday, high no-show rate. New patients on a Saturday don't have a different no-show rate than new patients on a Friday. That's what we know. We also know that there's a higher no-show rate for restorative work, but you get high case acceptance. So it's not that simple. I'll tell you though, I personally have never worked on a Saturday, so I'm the guy that says, I got a family, I'm not working on a Saturday. Yeah, we got a bunch of offices of dentists that want to work on Saturdays, and they're slammed. They'll be booked out way in advance on Saturdays. They'll have a slightly higher no-show rate due to the restorative and the prophies, but they're some of their best days. So it's important to not focus on the no-shows and just assume, oh my God, it's not worth it. What's important is to actually look at the numbers, right? To see, okay, how much more money are we making because we made this decision?
And Scott, in regard to the numbers, what management information system are you recommending for us? I mean, you know, I know Dentrix, Patterson owns and MuleSoft. There's CareStreams, PracticeWorks, and SoftEd. Since you're just a total numbers guy, what management information system do you like these people to have?
Well, here's the hard truth. None of them track the numbers we need them in the way we need them.
I know.
Because all of them, the deepest get is they'll give you a list of patients overdue for a recall, but they won't tell you what reappointment rate is and why you're not scheduling patients.
They can't even make payroll.
We've got to have a third-party program. My favorite one today, right now, is Dental Intel. They're my favorite. They're a third-party program that you layer on top of things like Open Dental, or you layer it on top of things like Dentrix or EagleSoft. Now I have my opinion on the practice management programs, and I don't like most of them, so I'd rather not speak too negatively about them. Most of them are way too expensive. The servers go down. Customer support is horrible. The billing and insurance is messed up. There's way much fat in the program. The scheduling is not set up properly. I just wonder who the heck was the consultant they hired when they built their programs, because they're just not very dentist friendly.
They're horrible.
Yeah, they're terrible.
I mean, if you have an MBA, it's a joke. To call it a management information system, they ought to call it a chaos system. They're just bullshit with the capital B. I mean, they can't even generate a statement of income, a statement of cash flow. You buy Dentrix, and the damn thing can't even generate a check to pay for itself. I mean, how messed up is that? When the shine man comes for their supplies, I can't pay for supplies to say, oh, I'm on Dentrix. It doesn't do payroll. Sorry, can't pay you. Make the damn thing pay you. I mean, it's just crazy. But if you have to pick one, what do you recommend?
Well, there's a handful of good ones. If I had to pick one today, I'd look at Open Dental.
Yeah, that's what
Open Dental is like the Toyota that never breaks down. Dentrix and EagleSoft, in my opinion, today might be like the BMW that always breaks down. You got high maintenance costs. It sure is pretty though, but it's a problem to deal with. Open Dental is like that Toyota that just doesn't break down. It gets you to work and back very predictably, very low cost. It's awesome, but it's not the only good one. But it's one.
Dentrix and EagleSoft are a Jaguar. You know, that's the ultimate luxury car that you have to hire with a full-time mechanic. Yeah, on Dentaltown, that's the only one that has all rating fans. Hey, Scott, we're completely out of time. These shows are an hour. You're an hour before. You're just so rocking hot. You want 4 minutes over time. I'm going to bring you back. Tell them, will you come back?
Yeah. Let's come back.
What do you want to talk about when you come back?
Nick, let's talk about how outsourcing is completely changing the face of dentistry for startups all the way to big groups and everyone in between. It's making a dental practice much more profitable and much easier to manage.
Okay, and when you email me, can I come to your seminar, your 2.5-day one?
Yeah, you should come.
I want to come. I love San Antonio. San Antonio, that's the Riverwalk, right?
Yeah, Riverwalk, incredible Mexican food.
Yeah, I love San Antonio. If you want to, if one of my listeners wants to ask you a question, you recommend they go to breakawaypractice.com. Can they call you? Can they email you? Is there any other contact information you give?
Yeah. Breakawaypractice.com is a pretty big website. We're putting a bunch of videos on there as we speak. They can email us at info@breakawaypractice.com. That email, I've got 140-something staff, including myself, and whoever's best to answer that question will hop on that email and answer it. It might be me. It might be some of my top people. Those are the two best ways to get a hold of us. You can call us as well, but, go to the website or shoot us over an email. We'd be happy to help if we can.
Okay, Scott, you're a legend. You're one of my idols. Like I say, I feel like I'm your father because I'm 17 years older than you, but I feel like I saw you born, raised, reared, and made it all the way to the NFL on Dental Town. And if you guys ever want to read the Rocky Hottest thread, what is your favorite thread about you and all of your knowledge on Dental Town?
Well, the biggest thread that everyone refers to is called Not the Average Startup. That's a very big thread. We go step by step. I don't know how many hundreds of pages long it is. It's really long with lots of screenshots and how-to stuff in it.
I know.
It's an awesome thread, and there's a lot of people that jumped on that thread and gave a ton of great information.
Scott, when I go lecture, it is the number one, when people want to know business, it's the number one thing that will happen to me. Saying a specific thread, they'll come up to me and say, oh my God, I discovered that, and the next thing I knew, it was 2:30 in the morning, and I had 20 pages of notes. Okay, we're going to bring you back. Scott, thanks for all that you do for dentistry, and thanks for all that you do for dental.
Yeah, you too, Howard. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, buddy.